Right now, while you're watching this, there's a city in America losing residents almost as fast as it can count them. Not to death, not to a disaster, they're just leaving. Packing the car, locking the door, and never looking back. What you're watching is the textbook definition of urban decay, and it's happening in cities you would never predict. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. It's not the city you're thinking of. You've been told Detroit is the poster child for American collapse. You've heard the story 100 times. The empty factories, the abandoned mansions, the grass growing up through the freeway. But the Census Bureau data from 2024 tells a different story. It's a story where Detroit is actually clawing its way back, and a whole list of cities you'd never suspect are quietly emptying out faster than anyone is talking about. So today, you're getting the real ranking. The 10 American cities people are fleeing the fastest, measured not by vague reputation, but by the cold percentage of residents who've already given up and walked away. Some of these you'll see coming. Some of them are going to stop you cold. And the number one city on this list, you probably think it's doing just fine. You might even live there. Before we start, you need to understand what's actually happening when a city loses people. Demographers call this the shrinking cities phenomenon, and America has more of them than any other developed nation. It's not just a smaller number on a census form, it's a feedback loop. Every person who leaves takes their taxes with them, and fewer taxes means worse schools, slower police response, and potholes nobody fills. Economists call this tax base erosion, and once it starts, it's brutally hard to stop. Worse services push the next person to leave, and on it spins, faster and faster, until a city that felt permanent just a generation ago is fighting for its life. That's the machine running underneath every single entry on this list. Let's start the countdown. Number 10. Memphis, Tennessee. You might think Memphis is too big to be on a list like this. It's not. The Census Bureau put it at around 610,000 people in 2024, and it's been sliding for years, shedding tens of thousands of residents since 2010. But the raw number isn't the scary part. The scary part is who is leaving. It's the middle class. It's families. The people who pay the taxes that keep the lights on and the schools open. When a struggling family leaves a struggling city, that's painful. But when the stable families leave, the ones with options, the ones who could have anchored a neighborhood for another 30 years, that's when the floor starts to go. And that's exactly what's happening in Memphis. The people with the means to choose are choosing somewhere else. It's a pattern that traces back to redlining and decades of housing discrimination that systematically starved certain neighborhoods of investment, and whose effects are still working their way through the city today. Think about what that does to a place. The teacher who could have taught your kids, gone to the suburbs. The small business owner who would have opened on your block, opened in a county 40 minutes away instead. Every one of those departures is invisible on the day it happens. There's no headline. There's just one more for sale sign, one more classroom that's a little emptier in the fall. We did a whole deep dive on exactly how that middle-class exodus works in Memphis, and it's linked for you up in the corner. But for now, just know this. Memphis kicks off the list because it proves the thing this whole video is about. Decline isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a moving truck in the driveway you don't even notice, until there are 1,000 of them. Number 9. New Orleans, Louisiana. This one hurts, because there is no city in America with more soul. The music, the food, the history, there is genuinely nowhere else like it on the continent. But soul does not fix the pipes. And the pipes in New Orleans are a serious problem. New Orleans fell to around 362,000 people in 2024, its smallest population since 2012. And here is the number that should stop you cold. Nearly 23% of the homes in that city sit empty, almost 1 in 4. Walk certain blocks, and you will see the blight for yourself. The dark windows, the overgrown lots, the beautiful old houses just sitting there, waiting for someone who is never coming. When you have that many vacant homes, the problem is not just the empty house. It is what the empty house does to the four houses around it. Property values sag, blight spreads, and the block stops feeling like a neighborhood and starts feeling like a place you pass through. When residents were surveyed, roughly 2/3 said the city basically was not working for them, and a lot of that anger pointed straight at one thing: the water system. They point to the sewerage and water board, which residents simply do not trust anymore. Imagine paying city taxes and not being confident the water coming out of your tap is something you would give your kids. That is a daily, grinding reason to leave, and it has nothing to do with a hurricane. People assume New Orleans only loses population when a storm hits. The truth is scarier. It is losing people on the calm, sunny days, too. You can love a place with your whole heart and still reach the point where you cannot raise a family there. Too many New Orleanians have hit that point, and quietly, without drama, they have gone. Number 8. Jackson, Mississippi. Now it starts getting uncomfortable, because Jackson isn't some forgotten mill town. It's a state capital, and it's losing people faster, per person, than almost anywhere else in the entire country. Jackson lost more than 12,000 residents between 2020 and 2024. The steepest per capita drop among major U.S. cities in that window. It's down to about 141,000 people, and it is still falling. Now stop and really think about what a state capital is supposed to be. It's the most stable address in the state. It's where the government jobs are, the institutions, the money that does not disappear in a recession. It's supposed to be the safe bet. And in Mississippi, it's one of the fastest emptying cities in America. Why? Because the basics broke. Jackson has lived through water crises where people could not drink what came out of the tap for weeks. A capital city in the United States handing out bottled water. Adds services that do not always show up, infrastructure nobody seems able to fix, and a creeping sense that no help is coming, and you get a population that does the only thing it has the power to do. It leaves. When the people who can leave a capital city are leaving it, that is not a local story. That is a warning shot you can hear from 3 states away. And the people still there are the ones who could not get out, which is its own kind of tragedy. Number 7. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is the city that already lost the war and is still losing it. Picture this. In 1950, this was the 7th largest city in America, nearly 1 million people. A titan of industry, steel and manufacturing, one of the engines of the entire country. Today, it's hovering around 360,000. That's not a decline. That's a city that got cut by more than half and never fully stopped bleeding. Now, you'll hear some optimists say Cleveland has finally plateaued, that neighborhoods like Tremont are pulling young people back with walkable streets, Victorian charm, and great food. And that's real, and it matters, and it's worth rooting for. But don't let the comeback headlines fool you about the scale of what happened here. When 1/3 of your manufacturing jobs vanish in a single decade, people don't sit and wait. They follow the work out the door, and they take their kids, and eventually their grandkids, with them. Whole family trees that would have grown up in Cleveland grew up somewhere else instead. Here's the part that should stick with you. The city you see in Cleveland today isn't recovering to what it was. It's learning to survive at a fraction of its old size. Those are 2 completely different things. A city of 360,000 living inside the bones of a city built for 900,000 is a city paying to heat empty buildings, patch roads nobody drives, and run pipes under blocks where half the houses are gone. The visible blight, the vacant lots and boarded storefronts, isn't the disease. It's the symptom of tax base erosion that's been running for 50 years. The people who left already understood the math. They just did it before everyone else. Number 6. Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is on this list for a sneaky reason, and it is a reason that should make you nervous about your own city, wherever you live. Because Buffalo did everything the experts told it to do. It leaned into its history. It invested in its culture. It bet on its waterfront. And yes, it has had a genuine cultural rebound, the kind that gets written up in glossy travel magazines saying Buffalo is back. But underneath the good press, the long arc is still pointing down. And here is the quiet killer, the thing that makes Buffalo so important to understand. This is a city built for a population it no longer has. Wide boulevards laid out for streetcars and crowds. Grand old housing stock built for big families. Water mains, power lines, and sewers sized for double the people who actually live there now. That infrastructure does not get cheaper when the people leave. The bill stays exactly the same. It just gets split between fewer and fewer wallets. So every single resident who stays in Buffalo is quietly paying to maintain a city built for someone who already moved away. That is the trap. And it is not just a Buffalo problem. It is a Rust Belt problem, a Northeast problem, and increasingly, it is coming for sprawling Sun Belt cities that overbuilt during the boom. When you build a city for 1 million people and only half of them show up, the ones who stay inherit the whole bill. Look around your own town and ask yourself, was this built for more people than live here now? Because if it was, you already know who is paying for it. Number 5. Detroit, Michigan. And here's where I have to stop you, because you've been waiting for Detroit this entire video, haven't you? You assumed it would be number 1. Everybody does. Detroit is the word we use when we mean American urban decay. So let me tell you what the data actually says, and it's going to surprise you. As of the most recent Census Bureau estimates, Detroit has now recorded 3 consecutive years of population growth, the first sustained reversal in more than 6 decades. Read that again. 60 years of falling, and the line finally ticked up, not just once, but 3 years running. The city the entire world uses as shorthand for ruin just turned a corner that St. Louis, Cleveland, and Jackson have not. Corktown, the city's oldest neighborhood, is filling up with young creatives. There are rooftop bars and cafes where, not long ago, there were genuinely ruins. Money is coming back into the core. It's slow, it's fragile, but it's real, and it's pointing in the right direction. Now, let's stay honest, because honesty is the whole reason you're still watching this instead of some clickbait list. Detroit is still a shadow of its 1.8 million person peak. It sits around 645,000 today. The hole that was dug here is enormous, and the city is nowhere near climbed out of it. 3 good years don't undo 60 bad ones. But the direction finally flipped, and direction is everything when you're talking about whether a city lives or dies. That's exactly why Detroit is number 5 and not number 1. Because the 4 cities still ahead of it on this list, they're the ones the moving trucks are still lining up for right now, this year. Detroit already hit its bottom and started the long climb back. The next 4 haven't hit bottom yet. They're still falling. And the closer we get to number 1, the less that fall looks like a Rust Belt story at all. Number 4. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham was supposed to be the South's industrial crown. They grew so fast in the iron and steel boom that they literally nicknamed it the Magic City, because it seemed to appear out of nowhere, almost overnight. Well, the magic is gone. Birmingham has been grinding downward for decades, and here is what makes it genuinely strange. It is losing people while sitting in the middle of the fastest growing region in the country. This is not a frozen Rust Belt town watching its residents flee to the Sun Belt. This is the Sun Belt. This is the South, the region everyone is supposedly moving to. People are pouring into Tennessee, into the Carolinas, into Georgia and Florida and Texas. And Birmingham is losing the race inside its own backyard, while neighboring metros swell with the exact migration wave it cannot seem to catch. When a city cannot grow even with the demographic wind directly at its back, you have to ask what is actually broken. And the people leaving have already answered the question with their feet. Stagnant job growth in the core. A sense that the opportunity is everywhere around the city, but not in it. So the talent that grows up in Birmingham increasingly builds its career somewhere else. They did not leave the South. The South is booming. They just left Birmingham. And that is a far more damning verdict than any cold northern city emptying out, because Birmingham had every advantage of geography and timing, and still could not hold its own people. Number 3. Youngstown, Ohio. If you want to see the most extreme version of American abandonment, the absolute end state, the thing every other city on this list is afraid of becoming, you go to Youngstown. In 1950, this was a city of 168,000 people. A real city, with a downtown, with a future. Today, it's around 60,000. It has lost nearly 2 out of every 3 residents it ever had. Let that actually sink in for a second. Picture your own hometown right now. Picture the streets, the schools, the people. Now imagine 2 out of every 3 of them simply gone. The houses still standing, but empty. The schools half closed. The blight so advanced that urban renewal programs have literally demolished entire blocks just to manage the vacancy. That's not a hypothetical. That's Youngstown in real life today. And here's the brutal lesson Youngstown teaches the rest of the country. One collapse, steal, and the city never recovered. There was no diversification, no backup industry, no second act waiting in the wings to catch the fall. The city had bet everything on a single industry, and when that industry died, the city started dying with it in slow motion, decade after decade after decade. The people who left weren't disloyal to their hometown. They were just the first ones honest enough to admit there was nothing left to stay for. Youngstown is what the very bottom looks like, and it's the mirror every single industry town in America should be staring into right now. Because the thing about hitting bottom this hard is that there may be no climb back. Some cities don't recover, they just slowly stop existing. Number 2. St. Louis, Missouri. For the period stretching across the early 2020s, St. Louis posted the most severe population loss of any major city in America. It took that grim crown right off San Francisco's head. It lost more than 21,000 residents in just 4 years, and critically, it is still going. At its 1950 peak, St. Louis was home to nearly 900,000 people. It was the 8th largest city in the entire United States. Today, it is under 280,000. That is a collapse of roughly 65%. But the percentage is not even the most frightening part. The speed is. The people who study this point say that St. Louis is not just shrinking, it is shrinking at an accelerating rate. The decline is getting faster, not slower. And when they dug into who is actually leaving, they found the same poison we saw back at number 10 in Memphis, but worse. It is families with children. Young parents are looking at the schools, looking at the crime numbers, looking at the basic question, is this a good place to raise my kid for the next 18 years? And they are answering no. They are choosing the suburbs. They are choosing anywhere else. And every family that leaves makes the next family's decision easier. The school loses students, so it loses funding, so it gets worse, so the next family looks at it and leaves too. That is tax base erosion running at full, terrifying speed. That is the feedback loop from the start of this video, accelerating past anything urban renewal programs have been able to slow. That is how a city tips from struggling to genuinely abandoned. St. Louis is the fastest emptying major city in the country right now, full stop. Which raises the only question that matters. If St. Louis, a 65% collapse, accelerating, the worst in the nation, if that is only number 2, then what on earth is number 1? Number 1. New York City. I know. You would think I've completely lost it. New York? The greatest city on earth, the financial capital of the planet, the place 8 million people are supposedly clawing over each other to get into, that New York is number 1 on a list of cities Americans are abandoning fastest? Yes, that New York. And here's what almost nobody is telling you, because it's buried in the newest census numbers, the ones released just this year. Between 2024 and 2025, New York City posted the single largest numeric population decline of any city in the United States. Not St. Louis, not Detroit, not some forgotten steel town in the Rust Belt. New York. The biggest raw loss of human beings in the entire country in the most recent year we have data for. And before you say, okay, but that's just New York being expensive and weird, look at what happened to Los Angeles. The Los Angeles metro flipped from a population gain of around 25,000 in 1 year to a loss of more than 62,000 the next. Let me say that plainly. These are not dying cities in the way Youngstown is dying. These are the supposed winners. The places the entire American economy is built around. The cities that were never, ever supposed to be on a list like this. And they are now leaking people right alongside the Rust Belt. So what changed? Why did the floor suddenly drop out from under the giants all at once? One word: immigration. For decades, the biggest American cities kept their population numbers propped up with one powerful engine: international migration. People arriving from abroad quietly replaced all the residents who were leaving for the suburbs and the Sun Belt. New arrivals masked the decline. They hid the leak. From the outside, the city looked full and thriving, and nobody asked the hard questions. And then, that engine slowed. Hard. Net international migration fell from roughly 2.8 million people in a single year down to about 1.3 million, a drop of more than 50% in the span of just a few years. When that immigration slowdown hit, the mask came off, and suddenly you could see what had been true underneath the entire time. The giants were already losing their own residents. They had been losing them for years. They were just papering over the hole with new arrivals, and the moment the new arrivals slowed, the real picture snapped into focus. That's why New York is number one. Not because it's the most physically decayed, it obviously isn't, and nobody's pretending Manhattan looks like Youngstown. It's number one because it represents the single most important and least understood shift happening in this country right now. The urban decay isn't a Rust Belt story anymore. It isn't a poor, struggling city story you can watch from a safe distance. It has reached the very top. It has reached the cities everyone assumed were permanent, untouchable, immune. And if it can pull the floor out from under New York and Los Angeles, then the comfortable assumption your own city is quietly running on, that the people will always just keep coming, might be the most dangerous assumption in America. That's the real story of who's leaving America's cities. It was never just about the obvious places. It's about an entire country quietly reshuffling itself, out of the cities that broke their promises, and now, increasingly, out of the cities that were supposed to be safe forever. Here's the question worth actually sitting with tonight. Every single city on this list believed, at its peak, that it was permanent, that the people would always stay. St. Louis believed it at 900,000. Cleveland believed it at nearly 1 million. Youngstown believed it at 168,000. Detroit believed it at 1.8 million. Every one of them was certain, and every one of them was wrong. So the only honest question left is the uncomfortable one. Is your city next, and would you even see it coming before the moving trucks did? Or would it look exactly like Memphis at number 10, quiet, invisible, one driveway at a time? If this opened your eyes, you need to see what is actually happening inside these cities. Not just the rankings, but the real stories, the decisions, the exact moments it all started to turn. We have broken down Detroit, St. Louis, Memphis, and more, one collapse at a time, and they are all waiting for you right here on the channel. Pick one. Start watching. Because once you understand how a city actually dies, slowly, quietly, and then all at once, you will never look at your own hometown the same way again. Subscribe and let us keep following the story of where America is really going.